This episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine is brought to you by BioGland MedLab, proud platinum partners of ATMS. Built on 50 plus years of healthcare experience and nutritional science, BioGland MedLab delivers practitioner-only formulas, trusted by practitioners, loved by families. Welcome back to Let's Talk Natural Medicine, brought to you by the Australian Traditional Medicine Society. I'm your host, Natalie Hume, and today we're exploring a topic that many parents struggle with, and that's fussy eaters. Did you know that up to 50% of parents report difficulties with their children's eating habits? While it can be very frustrating, there are so many effective natural strategies to encourage healthy eating habits in children. And joining us to share insights today and practical strategies is Brittany Darling. Brittany is a nutritionist and a herbalist and has done further study in pediatric nutrition and children's health. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brittany.
Thanks for having me, Natalie. I'm excited to be here and hopefully impart some of my prior experiences on fussy eating to other parents.
Yeah, and it seems so common, right? So what is going on with picky eating? Why is it becoming common or maybe even more common? And what factors contribute to it?
Yeah, it does feel like it's becoming more and more the norm and definitely more common. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a parent these days who hasn't struggled with a child with picky eating. So, I mean, it usually kicks in or occurs around age 1 and can peak around age 3. But I mean, I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old and we're still navigating all of this. It's an ongoing battle. But I always think, okay, let's go back to starting solids. Like, how were solids introduced? Did you introduce textures and different flavors? That you essentially have a 6 to 9 month window to introduce, when you start solids, as many textures, flavors, different foods as possible. And that's how you lay the groundwork. So, for future children or children that are just starting solids, that's sort of my advice. And there's also other things to consider. Like, I see a lot of kids with neurodiversity, so we're looking at sensory sensitivities, again, exposure and familiarity with these foods. So, are we just giving them things that they're not familiar with? Food and eating is also a learnt behavior. Like, are you sitting down to have meals as a family? Are you a bit of a picky eater yourself? Because quite often as adults, we can also have certain things that we like and don't like, and even rigid ideas around what we like to eat and what we don't eat as well. And of course, nutrient deficiencies can play a role as well in terms of appetite regulation, especially things like iron and zinc. So that can be a bit of a vicious cycle that just somehow needs to be broken. Deficiency of iron and zinc can cause some picky eating, but then how do you correct that deficiency if they're not willing to eat those iron and zinc-rich foods? It's tricky.
And I think you also talked about like what the parents eat too. So many times children model our behavior, right? So if they go, oh, yeah, no, I see my mum and dad just eating 1 or 2 types of foods, then the kids are going to also experience that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And in Australia, we know that only 5% of Australian adults are getting enough fruit and vegetables each day. So do we expect anything better of our children? Like, it's a whole family approach.
Yeah, and you also mentioned things like the neurodiversity there as well. So do you find that a lot of people have that texture issues with children, and they find that they can't, even like foods can't touch on the plate, things like that? You've really got to, I guess, meet your child where they're at, don't you, with what's going on with them?
Yeah, every child's going to be different, but it can be texture, it can be smell, it can be flavor, it can be, that they don't like certain things touching, and that's where those bento box style lunch boxes or plates are really great. Whereas other kids love things like bolognese, and that's everything all mixed together, and that's their kind of go-to. So every kid is different. It's really like honing in and going, okay, my child seems to really like insert whatever the food is. Maybe it's buttery pasta with cheese. What is it about the buttery pasta with cheese that, is it the slippery, slimy texture? Is it that it's not a strong flavor or a strong smell? Is it that it's, a relatively mild flavor? Is it the consistency of the food? It's always the same. Those pasta strands are always the same. It can be all sorts of things. But when you start to think like that and go, okay, what foods are similar to that buttery pasta? What's also really easy to chew and slippery and slimy and not really strong smelling. And that's how I kind of approach it in terms of, what can we add in that's going to be seen as a safe food or a stepping stone to get to the next stage.
Yeah, so interesting. And I guess I'd love to hear your story as well. So what led you to focus on helping parents manage fussy eating, and particularly maybe where children are experiencing sensory aversions or food or anxiety around food?
Yeah, so I've got two children. I've got my son who's now 12. He's ASD or has autism. I actually don't like to call it ASD because we don't see it as a disorder. It's just autism. He also has ADHD. And then I have my daughter who's 10, and both of them have had their ups and downs in terms of fussy eating. And even now they have their set things that they like. Occasionally they'll try something new, but it's pretty, we try and stay in the realms of what they're comfortable eating. And it can at times become a real issue. And I do find that there's lots of ups and downs with growth spurts. So sometimes they'll be fine and be more willing to try things. And other times it's back to just plain, butter and rice or pasta with tomato sauce. So we definitely go through phases. But yeah, I've learned a lot along the way. And yeah, it's certainly through my observations made me more and more curious as to, the causes of picky eating as well, and potentially what could be done to prevent it. I do think that things like rice cereal as an early introduction to solids is probably not the best way forward in preventing picky eating. Certainly it's not really providing nutrients. It's not providing different textures or anything like that. And I also think that too much leaning on purees too much, and especially the pouches, the pureed pouches, may contribute to picky eating as well. But that's just my some of my theories as to why.
Yeah, and we wanted to dive in a little bit around this whole, I guess, anxiety, a little bit around these kids having fear of certain foods. I guess what's going on there, and how can we support families who are maybe, addressing this with their children right now?
Yeah, so it is a tricky one. I do think it's definitely a multi-disciplinary approach. It's not just going to be a nutritionist or a naturopath. It's going to be a specialized therapist, potentially some cognitive behavioral therapy as well. And sometimes, I hate that saying that, if the kids are hungry, they'll eat. Well, not always. If there's an anxiety around that food, a prior experience, traumatizing experience like being force-fed, potentially a choking incident that may have happened, in their toddler years. All of these things can increase our anxiety around food. And there is a new sort of diagnosis that's just been added to the DSM criteria. So it's ARFID, or avoidant restricted food intake disorder. So different to other types of eating disorders. It's not anorexia or bulimia, but it's more linked to the anxiety around food, and of course, restricting its intake. And it's pretty common as a concurrent diagnosis with kids with anxiety, ADHD, and also autism, which is really interesting.
That is interesting. I have heard of ARFID as well. That's definitely being talked about a lot more. And obviously, I guess maybe, consulting was it like pediatricians? Is that where people are going to if they've got that issues and they're not too sure what's going on? Is that one of the best approaches for people to go do?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you want to get a proper diagnosis. So I think a good place to start is GP or pediatrician to get that referral. I believe it's a psychologist that diagnoses it. Similarly to ASD or ADHD, you would go to a psychologist or a developmental pediatrician potentially to get that diagnosis. But yes, it's probably going to be a process of elimination as well. There's lots of conditions that can cause, pain when you eat, things like eosinophilic esophagitis. So you want to make sure that you're ruling that out as a potential diagnosis as well. But yes, like all journeys to getting a diagnosis, it's a long one. You're probably going to see multiple practitioners and hopefully get some tools at the end of the day and actionable things that you can help your child with.
Absolutely. Sorry, excuse me. Now that leads me perfectly into our next question, because I want to talk about some practical strategies that maybe we can encourage our parents, your parents to encourage with their children. What are your top recommendations for introducing maybe new foods or reducing that battle time at mealtime?
Yeah, so one of my key things is shared meals. So I like the kind of, create your own journey. Maybe it's tacos. And so you've got your tortillas, maybe you've got some soft and some crunchy ones, depending on what your child might like. You've got your proteins, you've got your veggies and your cheese and your avocado, and then the kid can just kind of pick what they like and put it on their plate. But they're still being exposed to it. Like it's still in sight, they're still seeing it, but there's no pressure. It's just sort of built, and there will be something that they will eat on that table, hopefully. Not always, but hopefully. And I think also positive reinforcement. Don't focus on what they're not eating or what you would ideally like them to eat. Just focus on what they're doing that's great. I can see that you're sitting on your chair and looks like you're really enjoying your food. Well done. Or it makes me, feel so happy seeing you enjoy your food. Things like that. Rather than, why don't you just take one bite of the broccoli? Come on. I know you can do it. And, certainly not saying, well, if you eat your broccoli, you're going to get ice cream. Like, we all know that doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's what we all grew up as. Maybe if you eat that, we'll give you dessert. And that's not that positive reinforcement, right? It's not what we want.
No, it's not what we want. Yeah. And maybe that explains why I enjoy ice cream so much as an adult.
I hear you. And I guess also now you touched on zinc and iron. So I do want to explore nutrients and nutrient-dense food that we can try and support. And maybe why, if someone's low in those types of nutrients, why would that be affecting their eating?
Yeah, so iron's probably the key one. A lot of people say to me, well, hang on, why does my child need so much iron? They're growing. So anyone who's growing, building blood, pregnant women, young children, anyone who's losing blood, menstruating women need iron. So kids need iron because they're growing, they're developing, they need it for their immune system, they need it for their brain health, they need it for energy as well. And often the iron-rich foods are the ones that they don't love. So, animal protein, steak, although I do find kids prefer mince over, say, a steak or lamb cutlets and things like that. I find a lot of kids have, it's not laziness, but like a reluctance to chew, especially when you're only getting so much food in. I feel like mince is easy because you don't have to chew so much. You don't have to work so hard for your energy. So that's like a hot little tip there, is maybe try mince over steaks and things like that. But yeah, kids need more iron than an adult man each day. So that's a huge amount. And it can mean that, if they're not getting those iron-rich foods, that each day they're falling further and further behind. So iron supplementation can help to break that cycle. But of course, you want to check in, get your kids' bloods done if they'll let you do a blood test on them. But yeah, iron's involved in appetite regulation as well. So yeah, like I said, it's that kind of vicious cycle. Same goes with zinc. Zinc and iron-rich foods are kind of similar. It's mainly your animal proteins. With zinc, it's also your nuts and seeds. But I mean, I can't think of any kid that loves nuts and seeds. Oftentimes I find we have to hide them in, homemade muesli bars or slices and cakes and things like that. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, and there are some other, like if someone's wanting to just increase a bit more nutrients, what other some nutrients, like we've probably got like, your omega-3 foods, but maybe, hey, kids don't want to eat fish.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a tricky one as well.
Yeah, fish and seafood is absolutely a tricky one. That's where things like omega-3 supplements can certainly come in. I think the statistical data, we were looking at this recently, most kids aren't reaching their omega-3 intake. And omega-3 is so important for brain health, especially as they're growing, but it's also important for immune system, a whole range of things. And especially if we're talking about neurodiversity as well, DHA especially is so important for brain health. So yeah, that's where things like supplements can come in. Most fish oils are pretty fishy and these kids do not love it.
No.
So you really got to find a good non-fishy tasting omega-3. Something like an algal DHA might be a good option. Yeah, and then disguising your fish, you can make homemade chicken nuggets, not chicken nuggets, fish fingers. Get creative, but all these things are incredibly time consuming, worth it in the long run if your child eats it, but incredibly disheartening if they don't. Yeah, but then there's so many nutrients, right? Like I've only highlighted iron and zinc because I feel like they are probably the ones that are most commonly low and also linked to that appetite regulation. But fruits and vegetables, important for fiber, important for all your phytonutrients, your antioxidants, like so many things, right? And in the instance where the child doesn't like vegetables, oftentimes, and this, might be controversial, oftentimes I'm like, if they like fruit, just give them fruit instead of those additional serves of vegetables. It's better giving them that additional fruit than them going on the snack train and having ultra processed foods like the chippy snacks and all the bars and all the possible things that they could have instead of that fruit. Yeah. So it's, what can you do that's better? And yes, a lot of people say, oh, it's too much sugar in the fruit. Well, if they're going to end up having some kind of muesli bar or whatever it is, that's going to be more sugar than the piece of fruit without the benefits. So just trying to avoid packaged things as much as possible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And we're going to go into a little fact or fiction segment. So I'm going to share a common belief maybe about fussy eaters, and can you let us know if it's fact or fiction? So kids, they're eventually just going to grow out of picky eating on their own.
I think we can be hopeful. Yeah. But it's certainly not always the case. And like I said with ARFID, if you do have a persistent picky eater who is failure to thrive, not growing optimally, always getting sick, always tired, losing weight, and showing signs of anxiety and lots of other issues potentially as well, definitely see a specialist, see a pediatrician or someone who can help you, because it may not just be picky eating. There might be something underlying that's going on. It may be ARFID, it could be food allergies, it could be eosinophilic esophagitis. So essentially they could be getting reflux because they're allergic to a certain food, and that reflux is burning their esophagus every time they eat. There might be a reason for this, the picky eating is just the symptom. It's not the problem.
No, you've got to look at the bigger picture.
Yes.
Absolutely. So for parents listening to this, can you just give us some nice first steps, recommendations? How can they start to begin tackling this at home with their children?
I think take a step back and look at or think about what's my child currently eating, and what is it that they like about these foods, and how can I give them more of these foods that are similar while increasing, the variety of things that they're eating. So the pasta example that I gave earlier. The other thing that I like to do is get kids involved in selecting what the family's going to eat. So that could be just getting the Coles or Woolies magazine on the weekend, opening it up, getting them to tear out the pages and kind of, make a bit of a collage-y meal plan of things that they would like to eat in the next couple of weeks. And you don't have to do every single one of them, but if it's one meal a week where it's like, great, Timmy, you chose this meal. This is what you said that, and we've made it for you. Maybe they can, get involved in the cooking. I feel like that's like, I always say that, and then I'm like, I just want to be in the kitchen doing my thing, get it done, and I want the kids like making extra mess. But yeah, getting them involved in the prep does help with picky eating too. The other thing is making sure that they're hungry, so they're not like loading up on snacks right before dinner. I find, and again, this is like such a luxury to be able to do this, if I can get dinner into my kids at about 4:30 instead of like a 6:30, it's almost guaranteed that they will eat more of that food because they're actually hungry, rather than them snacking their whole way through the afternoon and then having dinner at 6:30 and they're hungry because they've eaten a whole bunch of stuff that they've found in the pantry. So early dinner if possible. And then with breakfast, I often find breakfast is a tricky one. Like a lot of parents get into a rut. They're like, oh, is it cereal? Is it pancakes? Is it, it's just like a very bready, low nutrition meal for a lot of people. And most kids, from my experience, don't love smoothies. If you can, get your kids used to eating a savory breakfast, like a leftover, slow cook something. It could be a bolognese. It could be leftovers, essentially. More nutrient dense, oftentimes easier, and definitely more healthy. So I think that's a good one to work towards.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think, breakfast, a lot of people struggle and they're in a rush usually, right? So it's like, yep, great. It's the toast, it's the cereal. And I guess you're looking at then, I love that point about an earlier dinner, because so many kids are starving when they get home from school and they just snack it up, right? And then you go, right, dinner's on the table, and then they don't eat. So I really love that. That's a great recommendation.
Yeah. And it does work, but it does take a bit of prior,
Yeah, maybe not everyone can do dinner at 4:30, but maybe 5:30 or a bit, that earlier time.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Brittany, and really sharing your expertise in helping to manage fussy eating children. Thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Natural Medicine. Now, to find an accredited practitioner, please visit atms.com.au and click on Find a Practitioner. And don't forget, while you're there, to sign up to the Friends of Natural Medicine newsletter, where we share more tips, family wellness, healthy eating, yummy recipes as well. So let's wrap up with some quick wins for tackling fussy eating. Try introducing maybe some new foods, as I said, in a positive way. Like Brittany says, don't get cranky at your children for not eating, not trying. Maybe encourage children to participate in food prep. Maybe Brittany doesn't like that part, but maybe that's a great way to help to share and to get them more involved, and to create a stress-free environment at mealtimes. Until next time, take care and stay naturally well.
Join us again by following us for more uplifting discussions on natural medicine and holistic well-being. And if today left you inspired, share the love with a 5-star review. It helps others on their wellness journey find us too.